Hey, it's Doug with Backcountry Pilgrim, a channel all about hiking, camping, backpacking, and the gear that goes with it. In 2022, I went through a pretty major gear overhaul. I sold off a whole bunch of stuff that I had, and I basically saved up enough money to get exactly what I wanted in several major categories. Now in this video, I'm going to briefly go over how that went, what I think about the new gear that I got and spent all that money on, but I'm also going to discuss one of the most important gear changes that I made for 2022. Alright, so if you saw my video in defense of expensive gear, you know that in 2022 I sold off a whole bunch of equipment, gear, anything I could get my hands on and get money for, and I upgraded many pieces of gear to what I'd always wanted. I went from the thru hiker favorite, the cheap BRS 3000 stove, to the deluxe Soto Windmaster. I also traded in my standard Nemo Tensor for an insulated, long, wide Tensor. I went from your typical blow-up pillow to a Nemo Pillow. I sold my trekking pole tent for a freestanding big Agnes copper spur, and I went all out and got a custom ULA circuit backpack. The Soto Windmaster has been great. I love that it has its own little ignition switch, so I don't have to use a lighter, although I always carry one as a backup just in case. Its wide burner that is shielded from the wind has been a lot more dependable in sketchy weather, and the ability to control the flame in a more fine-grained manner has been helpful, especially when I started using some foods that actually required kind of a simmering setting, which was very difficult to get with the BRS 3000. Given how lightweight it is, the fact that it still fits in my pot with a can of fuel, the Soto Windmaster was an absolute win. The sleep pad upgrade was huge. Literally, I went from a rather small 20-inch standard size pad to a long and wide sleep pad, which meant that I got 5 additional inches in width on my sleep pad. Now, because I am a stomach sleeper most of the time and a side sleeper sometimes, that extra width has just been a huge game changer for my sleep. I'm doing an entire video on stomach and side sleeping, so I'll go into the details there. But between that and the insulation, getting that R value up on my pad so that I am warmer at night, this thing has been absolutely great. The Tensor is the best sleep pad I've ever slept on, and this long wide version just made it better. And when you add all of that in with the Vortex inflation bag, the thing is just about perfect. Now for my tent, I wanted something freestanding. I'd been looking at the big Agnes copper spur forever. I found it online in the Bikepack version, which is a little different in a couple of ways. It has some extra features that are kind of helpful for biking, like the poles break down farther and everything is meant to fit into a tighter package. It's got some features like a bike helmet storage that I don't really need, but are useful for other things. But having used more than one copper spur, I can say this one is just so fantastic. The color coding on the single pole makes it so easy to set up, and the crossbeam just gives you more room. It feels like a palace inside. And the fact that you have some variations on how to set up your vestibule, whether you want just a nice big storage area or even kind of a canopy, just makes it all the more cool. And of course, the fact that it is freestanding makes it so much easier to deal with, especially here in the Sierra, where sometimes you've got granite slab or granite sand that you're trying to pitch your tent in. Neither one of those work very well for tent stakes, so having the ability to just pick the tent up, move it anywhere I want, and the fact that I don't have to worry about every single tent stake being placed properly just makes it so much easier and so much more dependable. It's easy to set up, easy to break down, it does the job, and it's very comfortable inside. I'm super happy with the big Agnes copper spur. I'm not sure what more I can say about my custom ULA circuit than I did in the initial video, but it has met every expectation I had. The pack is super tough. It still looks just as good as the day I bought it. It is very comfortable. I've had it up above 30 pounds on multi-day hikes, and it just rides like a dream. I never feel like I get to camp and I just want to get that thing off of my back. It just rides so well. It is so comfortable. The customizations that I made have all been used. I especially like the elastic crisscross band that I had added to the side. I've been able to use that for a camp chair and trekking poles and some other things that I want a little easier access to, but I don't want falling off. The extra straps on the top and bottom help a lot too, because although this is technically a 70-liter pack, it feels more like about a 40, and so it's really nice to have a lot of storage options on the outside, especially for quick access. Basically, the pack has been perfect, and I love it. Now, those are the major gear upgrades that I did in 2022, but there was another change I made that has been pretty huge as far as how I feel when I'm hiking on the trail, and that is some new shoes. For several years now, I have been a 100% Ultra guy. I turned in both my hiking boots and other kinds of shoes, and I went with the Ultra Trail Runners for all the usual reasons. The wide toe box, the zero drop. They're just comfortable shoes. I really liked them a lot, and I've been wearing them for a couple of years now. However, last year I started to hear a lot of good things about Topo Athletics. I wore those shoes for a while, and I did like them, but I had a little bit of trouble achieving a good heel lock. I was dealing with some blister stuff, and after a particularly rough hike, they kind of fell apart a little bit. Now, that was pretty much my fault because I let the shoes get completely soaked and then left them in a boiling hot car for too long. But Topo was kind enough to give me a good deal on my next pair, and so I actually picked up these. This is the Ultraventure Pro. Now, I had already tried out the Ultraventure 2, and I like them very much. They were a very different feel. They still had the wide toe box, but they had a 5mm drop. So they're not the zero drop of the Ultra, but 5mm isn't a huge drop, and I felt like it was doing a little better on my heel strikes because that little extra bit of shock absorbing really made me feel a little bit more confident when I was carrying a heavy backpack. The Ultras sometimes just felt so low slung, and I just lost the bounce so quickly in the Lone Peaks that I didn't really like them for heavier backpacking. So I got the Ultraventure 2s, I really liked their ride, and when it was time to turn those in, I picked up the Pro. Now, these are not massively different than the Ultraventure 2s, but they do have a few key changes that I liked, and this is what I've been wearing for practically all of 2022. One upgrade is that these are slightly more roomy than the Ultraventure 2, but they still have that real solid feel, the support that you don't really get from the Ultra Lone Peaks, which to me always felt a little floppy. They did fine on nice flat trails, but in a lot of the rocky kind of hiking that I did, I felt like the shoe was just not really hanging on to me like it should be. I felt like my foot was doing a lot more work than it should be, and I appreciated the ride on the Topo Ultraventures better. From the 2 to the Pro, Topo also upgraded the mesh. It's a little bit more abrasion resistant, but it is still very breathable, so these have been good shoes to use even when hiking in the heat. The biggest upgrade to me is a change in the dual density foam and the addition of a rock plate. The ride on these things is just amazing. It is bouncy, it is cushy. The support is not overdone, but it's definitely better than the squishiness of the Ultra for me. I like how this feels a little bit more like a boot, but it is still more flexible like a trail runner. Probably the thing that has impressed me most is how durable these things have been. Definitely better than the Ultra Lone Peaks, which tend to fall apart fairly rapidly. I still haven't killed these things even after a year of backpacking in them. I wore one for practically the whole year. I just busted these out and started wearing them, and I realized they feel just as bouncy and supportive as the ones I wore all year. I don't know how Topo did it, but these things have maintained their bounce and stability in a way that no other shoe ever has for me. Further, the Topo Ultraventure Pros are very lightweight. They're 23 ounces for the pair, which actually puts them below the Ultra Lone Peak, which themselves are quite lightweight. Two more features that I think put the Topo Ultraventure Pros above the Ultra Lone Peak is that number one, you've got a Vibram Mega Grip sole. This is the only thing I want on my shoes from now on. I have gone down granite slabs. I just felt like Spider-Man. This is the grippiest sole that I've ever had in a shoe. It is no contest between this and the Ultra Max Track. So if you're looking for something grippy, I mean, Vibram is the name in grippy soles, and you've got them here in the Topo Ultraventure Pros. The insert on this is an ortholite that actually does a little bit more than many of the insoles that come with the shoes. I feel like the cut is a little lower, and so the grip is lower on my foot. And although I get a nice tight grip on the midsole, and so the shoe isn't shifting around, my toes aren't hitting the front, My only complaint is that I feel like my ankle rolls a bit more with these shoes than it should. But that could be that I'm just not tying it correctly, or it could be that I started wearing these after a winter in hiking boots. Speaking of winter hiking, these are also Gator compatible. Now the Ultraventure Pros are not cheap. They come in at about $150 retail, which puts them $10 or $20 over their competition. But given how well these last, I absolutely will pay that extra $10 or $20 because since I don't have to replace these every few months like I feel like I sometimes do with the Ultra shoes, the value is absolutely there. So I really have almost nothing bad to say about the Topo Ultraventure Pros, and I have a lot of good things to say. I think this is pretty much my new hiking shoe. Alright, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, give it a like. Subscribe if you're into hiking, camping, backpacking, and the gear that goes with it. Click the bell if you would like updates from YouTube when I drop new videos. And as always, thank you for watching.